Illinois in introducing the DREAM Act of 2019, which would grant amnesty to millions of illegal aliens already here, while doing nothing to stop the surge of new illegal immigration pouring across our borders. Dave Ray is a spokesman for the Federation for American Immigration Reform.
It's mind-boggling that as the nation's borders are hemorrhaging under a strain of illegal immigration unseen in more than a decade, that a Republican and Democrat senator would get together and introduce an amnesty bill that will do nothing more than to further incentivize illegal immigration. It is unconscionable and dangerous to be introducing an amnesty at the time when the Border Patrol is already at the breaking point.
Ray says, fortunately, the DREAM Act has been a perpetual loser and will likely be voted down again in this Congress. He says the focus must be on securing our borders, ending asylum abuse, and closing legal loopholes that are contributing to the surge of unaccompanied minors and family units from Central America. I'm Chad Groening.
Facebook is demanding some new users hand over their password for their outside email account to get access to the social network. Mike Bauer has more.
This news comes on the heels of Facebook admitting it stored hundreds of millions of its users' own passwords insecurely just 2 weeks ago. Facebook users are being interrupted by a demand that they provide the password for the email account they gave to Facebook when signing up. Security consultant Jake Williams told the Daily Beast that's beyond sketchy, adding if that's what's required to sign up with Facebook, you're better off not being on Facebook. In a statement emailed to the Daily Beast after their report, Facebook reiterated its claim that it doesn't store the email passwords, but the company had recently been criticized for repurposing information it originally acquired for security reasons. Mike Bauer, NBC News Radio.
South Dakota homeschool parents are applauding the passage of legislation that gives their kids access to the state's Opportunity Scholarship Program.
Governor Kristi Noem signed House Bill 1040, ending 15 years of discrimination against homeschoolers. Homeschool legal defense attorney Scott Woodruff says formerly homeschool students could access the scholarship, but only if they did better on their ACTs than public school students.
Homeschool students had to score a 28, but everyone else only had to score a 24 to get the scholarship.
Woodruff says they came very close to passing this legislation last year, but he says then-Governor Dennis Daugaard betrayed homeschoolers.
We had a very good bill that would have put us on exactly level playing ground with all others. It went through the House and the Senate very strongly, and then to our shock and dismay, Governor Daugaard vetoed it.
He says the scholarship allows homeschool graduates to attend a public university or college at a much reduced rate, granting students $1,500 a year toward tuition. I'm Bob Kellogg.
The economy added 129,000 private sector jobs last month. That's the lowest in 18 months and well below the 170,000 analysts had forecast. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. I'm Rusty Pugh.
There's a particular reason why there is a Back to God radio show. It was about 4 years ago, God called me out of the pulpit and said, Dexter, I need you to go tell my people it's time for them to get back to God, back to my morals, back to my values. This is the thing that you're supposed to do simply because you belong to the Most High God. It's the least that you could do for a God that loves you the way that he does.
Time to get back to God. Weekday afternoons at 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible,
America was founded on liberty and independence and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free and we will stay free. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
what magic wand do you have?
A really strong job report to start the year, finishing really after a very strong year last year, 2.6 million jobs created last year, and here, the first month of this year, 304,000 net new jobs. That's more than economists had expected.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. So good to be with you today. And we have a jam-packed program. We're going to speak to Matt Philbin. He's a managing editor at MRC CoChair, Media Research Center CoChair. We're going to be talking about the media's unsuccessful attempts to stop the hugely successful, big deal of a movie, Unplanned, the Abby Johnson story. I've been so just encouraged by not just the coordination that's gone on behind the scenes with that movie, getting a chance to sit down and have breakfast with three of the producers while we were in Anaheim, California, and just spending time just listening to them. They're the same guys who brought us God's Not Dead. So if you love that movie and you love the production quality of that movie, then you're going to find this movie has the same level of production quality. Fantastic music. The score of the film is actually original content because they'd requested and received permission to use mainstream audio music from different artists. And then afterwards, Hollywood kind of pushed back and said, basically put pressure on those artists, and those artists rescinded their approval for their music to be used during the film. And so it was disappointing for them, but they ended up with some amazing music. And, God doesn't do anything by accident. He doesn't half-step. And so everything is as it should be with this film, including the blockbuster status that it's now enjoying. An amazing opening first weekend, and that's kind of in the face of a Disney production. They're into turning all of their cartoon blockbusters into live-action films. I think it's a total mistake. I have no interest in seeing the cartoons turned into live-action films, but apparently some people do. But Dumbo, the storyline to it barely worked as a cartoon, right? That was not your favorite movie to watch. Some people, if you were a kid like me, I watched Dumbo once. I'd seen it one time. I never needed to see it again. So it's kind of defies logic that they would make it into a live action film, but they did. It opened the same weekend as Unplanned and did horribly. So we're going to chat about the success and all of the different machinations they went through to try to crush it. We're also going to discuss the border. Obviously, it's a huge issue. We're seeing a complete breakdown of law and order down to the south of our country. And Mexico is not only complicit, but they're assisting in this onslaught. It's an invasion. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in the third segment. And we'll take your calls at that point as well. Right now, I want to get to the encouragement. And I got a lot out of this today. I just, sometimes, it can be daunting. You have a lot to do. You have a lot on your plate. There's a lot going on. And that's when it's a great time to go back into the Word and find out what God has said to his people when, you look around, the news is terrible, all of that. And so Jeremiah 33:3 is our encouragement for today. Now, I want to, and the title of it is Call to Me, and I will answer you and show you great and unsearchable things that you do not know. Who doesn't want to know great and unsearchable things that currently you're unaware of? I know I certainly do. Now, this scripture is about the restoration of Israel. It starts off in verse 2, actually. It says, "Thus says the Lord who made the earth, the Lord who formed it and established it. The Lord is his name. Call to me, and I will answer and show you great and unsearchable things that you do not know. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says about the houses of this city and the palaces of the kings of Judah that have been torn down for defense against the siege ramps and the sword." So let's cross-reference a little bit here, because it's so helpful to have something we can tie this together to in other parts of the Bible. Call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you. You will honor me. That's Psalm 50:15. When he calls out to me, I will answer him, and I will be with him in time of trouble. I will deliver and honor him. Psalm 91:15. So over and over again, God says, here I am. Call out to me. I'll help you. You need deliverance? I'm here. Have you fallen in the ditch? Have you got yourself into some trouble? You've engaged in some sin and now you're experiencing retribution? Still, you can call on me and turn to me, and I will relent. Isaiah 48:6. Turn to him and repent, and he will relent. I want to be clear about that. Isaiah 48:6 says, "You've heard these things, look at them all. Will you not acknowledge it? From now on, I will tell you of new things, hidden things unknown to you." I really feel like this in my life has pertained to things that sometimes it's things I'm wondering about. Other times it's things that are happening in my life that I don't see any plausible explanation for. I want deliverance. I want some kind of relief from the thing, and I'm trying to figure out why it's happening. And in those times when I've remembered, hey, you know what? Lord, why is this happening? That's all I've said. And sometimes I'll be in church the next Sunday and the pastor will actually weave the answer into his, preaching and teaching. Other times a person will tell me, sometimes they're just talking about something else and the answer will be given to me in that moment. Regardless of how it comes, I've always asked beforehand when that happens. So don't forget that God is not just here to answer our prayers. He's not some silent entity that we can't commune with, we can't receive answers from. God is real and he's able to answer your questions. And as it says here in the Bible, teach you unknown things. This to me ties into wisdom, where you've been around wise people before. You listen to them talk and you're like, wow, this person really, they have knowledge. They have wisdom. That comes from asking God, Lord, show me. Isaiah 55:6 says, seek the Lord while he may be found. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. And when is he near? Now, right now. He's near to you right now. Isaiah 55:7 says, let the wicked man forsake his own way and the unrighteous man his own thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, that the Lord may have compassion, and to our God, for will he freely pardon. So he'll pardon our sins, our transgressions. But we have to turn to the Lord first. And we have to repent and give up our wicked ways. And so this is something that we need as a nation right now. You know what I mean? A lot of the hate mail that I get where people are saying, I decree that you're Satan and you're this and you're that, is because, first of all, that person misunderstands what the Word of God says. They're not reading it. They're not studying it. But also because lawlessness and wickedness has become so mainstream and common that anyone who speaks out against it, it's almost like it's like, how dare you call that out? Everyone's doing it. You're the anomaly here. You don't get to talk about that. Well, actually I do. And so does any person who chooses to crack the Word open and take a look and impart what it says, which that's all I'm doing here. I don't write the Bible. I've never had any say in what's in it. I'm sharing what I found there, which leads me back to our cross-reference scriptures. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. That's Jeremiah 29:12. Again, God says to us, then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. God has over and over again told us he's able and willing, but he's also waiting for us to come to him with our concerns, with our repentance, with our reasonable expectation that his word is true. All we have to do is follow it. So acting in obedience and saying, Lord, I've messed up here. I repent. I'm turning away from that. And I want deliverance here. I want to be right with you. And that's what we have to say. That's what we have to do. Jeremiah 32:17 says, O Lord God, you have made the heavens and earth by your great power and outstretched arm. Nothing is too difficult for you. So in any situation, no matter what it looks like in the natural, no matter what reports you have, what piece of paper, what letter you've gotten, no matter what anyone else has told you, nothing is too difficult for God. Jeremiah 32:27 says, Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? And the answer is no. Nothing is too difficult for him. So, the answer here is that we have to call upon God. If we expect to receive any comfort from him, we can't say, well, God has numbered the hairs on my head. He's numbered my tears. He knows me. He formed me, and before he formed the deep, he knows all of my issues. Of course he does. But it's a relationship. So you have to call upon him if you want to see him draw closer to you. Promises in the Bible are there to encourage us to pray. They're not there to assure us that we just can sit back with our hands crossed and our feet up and, everything's going to be hunky-dory. It's the opposite of that. So the promises lead us to the gospel. And in that gospel, God reveals truth to direct us and give us peace, which makes us easy. So all of us who are in the process, who've given ourselves to Jesus Christ, who we're being sanctified from day to day, we know that we have the sanctifying grace. God's truth directs us. We are cleansed from the filth of sin. God's pardoning mercy actually frees us from guilt. We don't have to feel guilty. We are sinners, but we're justified, washed, and sanctified in the name of Jesus Christ. And so through all of that, we know that the Holy Spirit enables us to walk before God in peace and purity, but we have to pray. We have to read our Bible, and we have to pray, and we have to rely on God. And that means if we want to know the deep and unknown things, we have to ask him. So that's totally encouraging because I like knowing everything. And so knowing the deep and unknown things, totally on my to-do list, which means I have to pray even more. All right. So that's the encouragement for today. Now, I want to give you a little bit of audio of the president. He was actually talking to the press gaggle in the White House. Today, there had the Secretary General of NATO, the North Atlantic Trade Organization. He showed up at the White House, and he's there to do, they're there to meet. He's going to be there for a few days. But the president took that time to highlight something that is a promise made, promise kept, which is that NATO is now much better funded than it was before he was the president. And the president took some really interesting tacks in trying to get that done. Like, he was insulting people on Twitter. He insulted people to their faces at breakfast tables, when he was abroad. He didn't try to be people's friends. He did the mean old angry handshake, like, I can shake your hand harder than you shake mine. Does it feel like your hand is breaking? Okay, I did it right. That kind of thing. And everyone, while he was doing it, was all shocked and pearl clutching and aghast because they were like, he can't treat people like that. Well, it worked. The strong arm tactic totally worked with these people. Take a listen. And the guy was squirming in the chair while he was talking. It's number 5.
We've worked together on getting some of our allies to pay their fair share. It's called burden sharing, and as you know, when I came, it wasn't so good, and now they're catching up. We have 7 of the 28 countries are currently current, and the rest are trying to catch up, and they will catch up, and some of them have no problems because they haven't been paying and they're very rich. But we're looking at the 2% of GDP level, and at some point I think it's going to have to go higher than that. I think probably it should be higher, but we're at a level of 7 out of the 28. The United States pays for a very big share of NATO, a disproportionate share. But the relationship with NATO has been very good. The relationship with the Secretary General has been outstanding. And I think tremendous progress has been made.
And he's not getting any credit for that in the media, which is why he's telling the press gaggle at the White House. And I'll have to, the next time I read one, I'll have to save it and share it with you. Yesterday, I was reading one of the reports from the White House press corps, and the guy was, it was so funny. He was like, he wrote the press release like a story wherein he mocked the president because he doesn't believe anything the president said. And he's issuing this for all news organizations across the country to use in their reporting. I was kind of, it's unbelievable the kind of treatment the president gets from these people. All right, when we get back, we'll have Matt Philbin of MRC. Stay right there.
Here's American Family Association President Tim Wildman.
Lynn Ingram and Jim Duncan, 2 Texans, support and believe in our ministry here at AFA and AFR.
We know more about the laundry business than anything else. We know a little bit about a lot of things, but we know a lot about the laundry and dry cleaning business.
They created a laundry detergent to sell to folks to support AFA.
We just want to be able to provide a product that can be used by AFA to support the ministry.
When you wash your family's clothes with Redeem Clean laundry detergent, you can take great satisfaction in knowing that you're supporting the vital work of the American Family Association. It's a unique way to increase your giving to AFA. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more about the Redeem Clean products when you visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. I'll never forget the shock and fear that hit my family when my oldest sister, Elena, was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. We truly wrestled with fear. Thoughts like, are we going to lose her? How long does she have? What's the prognosis? All of these questions crowded out our other more mundane concerns. More often than not, fear is our first response to life's crises and challenges. Fear is born out of uncertainty. It's a sense of danger. Things are not predictable. We don't see this coming. We haven't been through this before. We don't know what's going to happen, and it strikes fear in our hearts. You know what? We must reject fear's paralyzing control. Listen to these tender instructions from Psalm 34, verses 4 through 7. I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. They looked to him and were radiant. Their faces shall never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and rescues them. You see, when fear strikes our hearts, number one, we need to stop and seek the Lord. The psalmist says, I sought the Lord. Seek God right now. Ask for his special presence in your predicament. Then secondly, embrace his concern. Verse 6 says, the poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. Finally, draw strength from his presence. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and rescues them. He'll strengthen you to face whatever danger you fear. Here's what I want you to remember today. God is with you, and he is greater than all your fears. No matter what you're facing, he is with you.
Join Crawford Loritz tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. It's so good to be with you. Before we get to our guest, I want to give you this Customs and Border Patrol agent describing the border crisis. He says, we're struggling down here just to keep things going. It's number 3.
Not that I'm aware of, but, I don't think they, down at my level, we don't hear too much about that. What we do know, though, is just in our area alone, last week we saw 9,000 people come, almost 9,000 people apprehended. That's not even counting the hundreds or thousands that are getting away from us because we don't have the manpower out there. Well, I think if people are coming in legally, they're coming between the ports of entry is not really an option for them. I think it'll do two things. One, it will get Congress to wake up and realize that it's time to get to work. We've been dealing with dealing with this since 2014, and nobody's lifted a finger, and it's fallen directly in the lap of the Border Patrol, and we're struggling down here just to keep things going. And on the second hand of that, if they close those ports of entries, we can use those agents to help us out in the field to get a control over what's going on. It's so far out of hand, you guys wouldn't believe it if you saw it.
And this is just candid conversation about how crazy it's gotten down there with 4,000 people a day. Now, you heard yesterday that, Mitch McConnell, who he never gets 100% from me because of his actions like this. Like whenever you think, wow, he did an awesome thing, then he comes up with some stuff like this, which is he threw the president under the bus, saying that if the president closes the border, it's going to have catastrophic economic consequences. Really? What about the catastrophic consequences that parents are facing because their kids have been killed by illegal aliens? What about that? What about the catastrophic things that are happening down at the southern border to our agents who are working, and a lot of them being injured by illegal aliens crushing through, pushing through, injuring them, trying to get into the country? And then you have this new presidential candidate. He's got 0 poll numbers. I don't even know what his name is. Castro. He's a candidate for the Democratic nomination, and he is suggesting that it should no longer be a criminal act for people to cross into the country illegally, which would, of course, obliterate our immigration system. Like, we don't have immigration if you don't have any consequences for entering the country illegally. It basically means the border is wide open. Anyone who's been waiting for 4 or 5 years or 10 years or whatever, or anyone who can't afford to pay the fees to get in, should simply fly to Mexico and come on in because there is no longer a penalty. And that would also negate any penalty for Canadians coming in illegally, for people flying to Canada and coming in here illegally, or people simply flying into the country on a passport and staying here indefinitely. Why would you need to make the difficult trek? Coming into the country unlawfully, whether you have a passport or not, it would no longer be an issue. Unless Castro's saying the only people who should have unlawful immigration decriminalized are those who are coming from south of the border, which then sounds a lot like the same kind of racism they claim that the president engaged in. So it's interesting to see the lengths to which people are willing to go to try to make themselves more palatable to voters on the left. Meanwhile, and we'll get to that later in the program, you've got MSNBC host Chris Matthews, he's sounding the alarm. He's saying if the Democrats don't move back to the center, or at least come back from the very tippy edge of teeter-tottering on the brink of destruction, if they don't do that, then they are going to experience a huge loss in 2020. So I'm looking here. I see we have now possibly another number for our guest. So we'll get to him in just a minute, hopefully here. So my big deal here is, what exactly do Democrats want besides raw power, besides the ability to ensure that they never have to suffer a crushing defeat like the one they saw at the Electoral College in 2016, besides not having to have anything that they've ever put into effect undone? Because I noticed that that's a big thing with Democrats. There's also some good news coming out of the loony Ninth Circuit. The president has now filled all of the vacancies that I guess had come about since his presidency, meaning that it's now almost perfectly balanced. There are 15 conservative judges and I think 16 liberal ones. So that means it's going to be harder for them to get unless they just all vote in lockstep, they have just the slimmest of majorities. So he's poised to flip that court back to some semblance of constitutional adherence. And that's pretty amazing. If you think about it, it's pretty amazing that would be the case. So my primary interest in looking at how we're seeing the Democrat field crack out is that we want to see normal Democrats again. I don't know where they've gotten to. I don't know where they're hiding, but it'd be great if they would come back out. Democrats who really believe in America, who believe in borders, a sovereign United States of America, good foreign policy, fiscal responsibility, and some semblance of respect for human life. Where are those Democrats? If they're around, please stand up, right? I know they have some constituents, but where are the leadership, the elected members who hold those views? All right, it's my pleasure to welcome Matt Philbin, Managing Editor of MRC Culture. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, Unplanned, the movie, looks like it's doing really well at the box office.
Yeah, it apparently came in fifth in box office this weekend, its opening weekend, and that's really, really good for a movie that opened in only, I think, about 1,200 theaters. And it's also great for a movie that has been absolutely blocked from advertising both on social media and on TV by a number of networks.
So 1,200 theaters, is that a limited release? What constitutes a full release?
Yeah, it is a limited release. And actually, it's something over 1,000 theaters, but it is a limited release. One of the great things that has happened is that because it has done so well, it gained another 500 theaters after the weekend. So it's got a lot of traction, and it's doing very well for an independent movie.
So what constitutes a full release? A couple thousand theaters? I mean, how many theaters does it have to be before it's a full one?
I think it's something along the lines of 3,000, but please, I'm not terribly certain about that.
Okay, so what kind of actions were taken? I saw Twitter basically waited until the film was released and then deactivated their account, the Unplanned official movie account, which at the time, I think it maybe had 30,000 followers on it, and they deactivated it. What else have they done to try to crush the ability of Unplanned to get their message out there so the movie could succeed?
Well, they did that. They had the movie had 40,000 followers, and they suspended it without notice, saying it was an accident. But of course, it's the kind of accident that never happens to, to liberals. So it came back. Twitter, said, "Oh, our mistake," and brought it back. And in the wake of that, it gained hundreds of thousands of followers. It was up to 200,000 as of April 1st. And it gained 99,000, and it became verified. It became a blue check mark, as they say, which is, a mark of sort of official imprimatur from Twitter. And then all of a sudden, the blue check mark is gone, which might be and it hasn't returned as of last we checked, which means that it hasn't been re-verified. However, as of our writing, it had 200,000 followers, so it was doing very well. The move backfired on Twitter.
So I saw a side-by-side that Abby Johnson put up on her social media on Facebook, and she was celebrating the fact that right now they have 340,000 followers. They have 597 tweets, so that's outstanding. Usually to get to 500,000 followers, you have 40, 50,000 tweets. 340,000 followers. They're following 4,439 people, 2,110 likes. But what's so funny about this is if you look up Planned Parenthood's account, and they have numerous accounts. They have PPAX,
yes.
PPACT, PPFA. But if you look up Planned Parenthood Action, they have 479,000 followers. So Unplanned almost has more than they do. You can go to Planned Parenthood Action. They have, in any case, this movie is now in the same neighborhood of the actual official Big Mama Bear Planned Parenthood. And that is kind of unbelievable if you think about it, because liberals have everyone convinced that abortion is so normative. There really isn't anybody else out there who's clear thinking who would oppose it.
Well, that's right. And what the movie also has is very motivated followers. People are very high on this movie. It's very well done. Apparently, I have not seen it, but it's very well done. It tells a great story, and it's kind of an unlikely story. It's a story not very you wouldn't expect to be made in Hollywood, and that has people pretty jazzed about it. And you can tell that a lot of people are excited to go see it, and a lot of people are excited to share it, which is a wonderful thing, considering that it was blocked from actual TV advertising on a huge swath of basic cable channels.
Also, one that I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but the big Christian contemporary music, it's like a woolly mammoth in the radio industry. It's called K-Love, and you don't have to be a Christian to listen to it. Lots of people who are, a-religious or irreligious or whatever the new term is for it, listen to K-Love because it's clean music that you can have on anywhere at any time. Your kids can be around. You don't have to worry about any sexually explicit language or profanity. They actually have advertised for God's Not Dead and other films, but they wouldn't allow Unplanned to advertise on their radio waves at first. And then after they experienced a huge backlash from their listener-supported radio base, they relented and allowed a few ads to go out before opening day.
And that's been the story across all media with this movie. It's very interesting, too, that the movie could not get any mainstream music to use as part of the soundtrack. As opposed to, I guess, having it composed itself. They wanted to use some mainstream music, and the owners of music would not play ball with them.
You know what's disappointing about that is most people consider some of the mainstream music, whatever their favorite genre is, it's kind of like the soundtrack to their life. It's what they're listening to when they're in the car.
Right.
You're cooking in the kitchen and you're jamming out to whatever. And more, I'm finding that instead of allowing the music that has been the the soundtrack to my life that really brings back a lot of memories, I'm having to switch over to Christian music, Christian radio, and also older music that, you know, it's gospel music and things like that, to allow that to be the soundtrack to my life, because it turns out the people who've been making that music that I've been jamming out to, they hate me because, you know, because I'm a Christian. And so I'm wondering how can Billy Joel or Bruce Springsteen or any of the rap artists, how can any of them have music that's the soundtrack to my life now that I know what they think about people like me?
It's true. And I mean, every election cycle, we hear about another Republican who's been asked to stop using a song because it offends somebody. You know, Tom Petty, when he was alive, did it with, I forget who it was, but it was Won't Back Down. You know, and a lot of people, a lot of music that we like, and that is not necessarily politically charged, you know, is being sort of taken away by this polarization, and it's unfortunate.
Well, I also think for people who say they don't want the country to be so divided, or they you know, Republicans never reach across the aisle, it seems like it's really a singular action by Democrats everywhere, where they're taking the extraordinary step. They have to go out of their way to show people that don't practice the Democrat religion, if you will, their orthodoxy, that they're not welcome. And that to me is really, it's instructive, because they're the party of tolerance. Remember when all they used to talk about was how we needed to tolerate each other? And I remember way back when my kids, they were so small, only one of them was in preschool, and we were at a big diversity roundtable at their preschool. And everyone's sitting around talking about tolerance. And I just raised my hand and I said, I don't know about you guys, but, you know, I just have that little bit of Air Force background. I just did the one tour. But I remember aircraft tolerance being the point at which a piece of steel or sheet metal or aluminum would crack, break, or fail. So anything that had reached its tolerance, it's at the point of failing. So I don't want to see a person and say, I'm going to tolerate them, because that means I'm only putting up with them to the point where I may break. It will break me emotionally, spiritually, break my ability to contain myself and be a respectable person. And a bunch of people around the table were kind of like, oh, I never thought of it that way. I was like, yeah. So we're not going to be, you know, kind to each other. We're not going to respect each other. We're not going to treat each other nicely. We're just going to tolerate each other. Who wants to tolerate each other until the point that we snap? And a lot of people nodded. They're like, but tolerance is the word that we use to describe how we can understand other people. And I said, I just don't think it's accurate if words still have meaning and we're going to look at what tolerance means. This is what we're dealing with these people.
Right, but that's a great example of how words don't have meaning anymore, and how, you know, the sort of lefty liberal use of words masks what they're really about, and it warps it in both ways. You know, are you talking about tolerance, or are you talking about celebration?
Exactly. Well, Matt, we're up against the break, and it's been so great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Matt Philbin, Managing Editor of MRC Culture. Fantastic work over there. Keep it up. We'll talk to you again soon. And we'll be back with more right after this.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
People often tell us how blessed our adopted children are because they're part of the Dungy family. But we don't look at it that way.
We feel that we are the fortunate ones. Our children have blessed us in so many ways. They've made us better parents and better individuals.
I've always wanted a large family, and we now have 7 boys and 2 girls. Tony jokes that if we adopt one more, he's going to go back to coaching because that would be quieter and less hectic.
Well, I was kidding, of course. Lauren and I are indeed blessed. For those of you blessed with children, thank God today for giving them to you.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Have you ever found yourself so embarrassed in a situation that you couldn't even look a person in the eye? One day, I was in the drive-thru of a famous fast food restaurant, and I was giving my order to whom I thought was a man, but turned out to be a woman. Oh my goodness. I found that out because I said yes, sir, and she quickly corrected me. I was so embarrassed, I couldn't even finish the order, so I drove off. That was a true story of fear and embarrassment. Deuteronomy chapter 31 verse 6 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." My brothers and sisters, do not operate as I did and drive away due to fear creeping in. Know that the Spirit of the living God lives in you, and with Him, He can bring about that courage that you didn't even realize was already in you. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victoria Hollyfield. Connect with us more at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Media Minute with Howard Kurtz.
The media have been absolutely pounding the Trump administration as heartless for proposing to eliminate funding for the Special Olympics. But there's more to the story. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos took the heat, testified on the Hill, said, the government can't fund every program. By the way, it's only $17 million, which is probably less than the Pentagon spends on the staples. And President Trump said he knew nothing about this. He came out. He said he's overridden his staff. He's restoring the funding. The funding is up to Congress, and Congress was never going to cut this in the first place. It turns out that Betsy DeVos behind the scenes had actually been fighting to preserve this funding, she says, but was overruled by the president's Office of Management and Budget. This is the kind of self-inflicted error that the Trump administration often gets into. I doubt that if the president knew about this, he would want to take the public relations hit over such a tiny amount of money over such an important cause. But the mixed signals resulting in more bad press for the White House. With your Media Minute, Howie Kurtz, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Look, the president's not threatening. The president's taking his job as the commander-in-chief very seriously in terms of protecting the American people. Even Obama's own Department of Homeland Security cabinet secretary this past week has said that there's a crisis at the border. We're glad that others, and Democrats and people in the mainstream media, are starting to understand the crisis that the president has been talking about for the last 2 years. We have to take action. Democrats in Congress are leaving us no choice. This is not the path the president wants to take, but they're leaving us no choice because they're unwilling to work with us to fix the problem because they're too busy playing politics instead of doing their jobs. Well, one could certainly.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the program. You can join us by calling 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. I'd be happy to take your call. I want to go just one wrap around there from our interview there with Matt Philbin. So glad he was able to join us today. And, it's always awesome to see the information that they gather over at Newsbusters. And I put the link up on Twitter and over on the Facebook page if you want to read the piece. It reads like something out of a movie. We used to think it was outlandish to even suggest. If you even suggested it, people would say, "Oh, you just don't know what you're talking about. You're just so overly sensitive, or you're making stuff up." If you said that certain individuals were out to prevent this group or that group from doing anything other than, race politics, if you said Hollywood doesn't want that place to succeed, but now it's open. Everyone's out there engaging in this kind of behavior. And I find it ludicrous that pro-aborts, people who actually, abortion is their God, they worship at the altar of Planned Parenthood, that people like that would say, we need to stop them from having the opportunity to advertise this on Twitter. We don't want anybody to see their movie. If they're so lock solid on abortion and they think it's so fantastic, why not just let everybody see what it is? And so now the cat's out of the bag, right? Guys, don't let what you know about this movie stop you from going to see it. That's the enemy right there, right? And you notice I don't say that a lot on the show because I believe in the power of God. We know Satan is real, but he is vanquished. He is under your foot. Go to the Bible. Read how many times God says he has delivered the enemy into your hand. But it is definitely the work of the enemy when you hear about the content of the movie and it's hard. It's hard content. And then you say to yourself, I don't think I'm going to go see it. I don't need to see that. Or I know what it is. I don't need to see it. I'll just support the movie in other ways. No, I need you to go see it. Be here with me, sisters in Christ, brothers in Christ. You have children. You're a part of this. You are a part of this conversation, whether you're checked in or checked out. Whether you want to acknowledge what's going on in our country surrounding abortion, the carnage is all around you. You're swimming in it. You're in the grocery store, you're in church, you're in Bible study, you're in close communication and contact with women who have had abortions. You are in close communication and contact with men whose wives, girlfriends, sisters, moms, daughters have had abortions. The men are suffering just like the women, and just like the silent scream that it was a movie, it is commonly referred to as what the unborn baby does before they are destroyed. They scream out, but they can't be heard because they're in the womb. That same silent scream is going on in the hearts of millions of Americans. They're screaming in agony. They have not yet received Christ's forgiveness for participating in this act, and they don't think they deserve it. They don't think they should be forgiven. And some of them are supporting Planned Parenthood because they feel like to do so would be hypocrisy. If they were to fight against abortion after having participated or had one themselves, they would be hypocrites. And so their silent scream goes on. And it is the source of things that we see. I'm telling you, self-harm among women, suicide, we have such an outgrowth of people who are on antidepressants and mood-altering drugs in this country. There is forgiveness in Jesus Christ for having an abortion, for telling your girlfriend or your wife she had to have an abortion, for being there helpless and not being able to stop your girlfriend or your wife from having an abortion, from participating in having your child, your daughter, go and have an abortion. There's forgiveness for that. For the woman who had the abortion, there's forgiveness. Nothing is beyond God. Nothing is beyond him. So the question is, first of all, you have to go see the movie. And you don't hear me say that a lot. I talk about culture and movies and things like that all the time on the show. And I never say you have to go see, I don't go there. But on this one, first of all, I've walked the walk. I've seen it. Okay? So I've seen it. And it is hard to watch. But it's not too hard for you. And so the thing that you need to do is just be obedient and go see it. Not obedient to me, but obedient in the fact that you have to take a stand on one side or the other. And not taking a stand is taking a stand. You're on the other. You want to be able to know that you did whatever you could to fight for the unborn children. And then also the children who are born who don't have a home, children who are, in foster care. The pro-life movement spans conception to natural death. So everyone that I know in the pro-life movement is working not just on behalf of the unborn, but after women make the decision that they're not going to have an abortion, when they change their mind in the Planned Parenthood parking lot, or when they go to, we have these fantastic Thrive vans here in St. Louis where it is a medical office on wheels. You know how they trick out the RVs for rock stars and for the Kardashians, and they put all this custom stuff in it? Thrive puts all of this custom ultrasounds, medical testing equipment. There's a nurse practitioner on board, and it drives to different locations, and you can have STD testing, you can have a pap smear, you can have a pregnancy test, you can have an ultrasound in this van. And women who go into that van when it's parked across from the Planned Parenthood on Forest Park Boulevard, and they change their mind and they decide they're not going to abort that baby that they just heard the heartbeat, they just saw it kicking and moving in their tummy, those women then go on to connect up with the Thrive Center here in St. Louis, and they go on. I mean, these women are given everything they need, from furniture, rent payments. Some of them, they don't want any of that. They don't want the baby, but they don't want it to die. And those women, their baby is adopted into a family, and they're allowed to keep contact or never have contact again. So it's a lie from the pit of hell that people who support pregnancy resource centers and and Mission Preborn and all these different wonderful organizations that we're connected up with, that we support them, but we after the baby's born, we're hands off, we don't care. That's not true. That is not true. We give money, we give supplies, we give whatever. When the clarion call comes out on the email, we all rally up and we take kitchen table. This mom has just gotten an apartment. We paid the rent for 3 months and she doesn't have a kitchen table. And someone will bring a kitchen table and chairs. Sometimes it's brand new. Sometimes it's super nice stuff that I just have an extra kitchen table and chairs and now it's yours. So this is where we have to take our stand. And I feel like it's one of those things where once you've jumped over that hurdle and seen this movie, not only will you be freed from the guilt and condemnation, but you are unleashed to go out there and speak about it, because that's what the movie that's what Unplanned does for you. If you aren't already there, it'll get you there. So please don't take this as anything other than me saying, after having seen it and met these men and talked to them and heard their hearts on this, these are some God-fearing men, and they're operating in the realm where they only see the step in front of them. Putting the movie together was literally making a phone call. If you were listening to the show while we were in Anaheim, you heard Mr. My Pillow, Mike Lindell. He said he got a phone call and transferred $1 million into their account to help them finish the film because he felt God said that's what he should do. God told him to do that. And they have other stories like that. They were telling, Madison and I were sitting at breakfast in Anaheim thinking, first of all, how did we end up at a table with these guys? It was a God thing for sure, because we walked in, we didn't know who we were going to sit with. We just sat down at an empty table, and the two of them sat down, and then the third producer we'd met here in St. Louis. So I was like, oh my gosh, I know you. He was like, how are you? Who is this? I was like, this is Madison. This is our daughter. We're just sitting here having breakfast. And the other two were like, you know this guy? And I'm like, yes, I know him. And he was like, do you know these two? And I'm like, no, we just sat down together. And he went, we brought God's Not Dead to we're the producers of God's Not Dead. And we're the producers of Unplanned. Me and Madison, our mouths were on our little breakfast place. We're like, what? So go see the movie. Just go see it. Don't allow the enemy to steal what can be an amazing experience for you. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Jim in Texas. Hey, Jim. Thanks for calling Stacy on the Right.
Hey, Stacy. I love that show, God's Not Dead. That was just outstanding.
Wasn't that great?
But what I wanted to comment on was that IRS lady who was blocking the conservatives and from getting their tax exempt status. I think her name was Lois Lerner.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And at one point, she was taking the Fifth Amendment, and she was saying at one point, why don't the conservatives, and she was referring to all of us conservatives, just go their own way? And I'm thinking since then, well, heck, you know what? Why don't we take them up on it? You know what? Let's go our own way. Let's separate from them. At one point in the Bible, it says separate yourselves from them. And I think I'm just kind of curious as to what the public would think about separating. Let the conservatives get together and have their area. Let the leftist liberals, maybe they want to become socialist communists, I don't know, go their own way. And maybe there'd be another part for the in the middle, who don't know which way to go. But I'm just kind of curious, how many people would actually support that idea?
Okay. You have to read, and thank you so much for that call. You have to read the books by Kurt Schlichter. They're Kindle books or audio books that you can listen to. That he doesn't do them. Well, actually, maybe a couple of his books are paper print. I've read two of them. It's The People's Republic. You got to read that. You got to read that book. It describes, Kurt Schlichter is a former Army colonel. He's also an attorney out in California. He's brilliant. He's a contributor over at Town Hall. He fills in on some other radio station I won't mention here, but he's a friend of mine, and he and his wife, they're just fantastic, good conservative folks. And he's written these books, and The People's Republic is about, you can get it in paperback. So I bought the online copy when it was first released. It was online only. And the book is about these blue states, which are collapsing under the dead weight of their politically correct tyranny. And you've got this lethal operative who's been haunted by his violent past, undertaking one last mission to infiltrate and take out his target in the nightmarish city of Los Angeles, deep in the heart of the People's Republic of North America. This is an amazing book. I read it, like I said, on my laptop. And then there's a part 2 to this book, which is amazing as well. It describes what happens after Hillary Clinton is elected president, and then the country splits into 3 parts. The East Coast and the West Coast are the North American People's Republic, or People's Republic of North America, and the center of the country is still the United States of America, and it's where the conservatives live. And it's constitutional, and the other parts are run kind of like a plutocracy, where aristocrats live well and everyone else is a serf, and violence reigns, and, you know, no-go zones and stuff like that. That's what would happen. The question is, you know, liberals don't want conservatives to go away and have their own place, because if we're somewhere else living under a constitution and worshiping God and being happy and making money, that would make them look bad, and they wouldn't like that. They're about control. They want all of us to be under their control. The idea that someone can pick up an idea and make a lot of money on it and be a black person and still worship God and be pro-life and all that, that upsets them. They don't want that happening. So we have time for one more quick call. Kelly in Alabama. Hey, thanks for calling the show today.
Are you there?
Hi there. Thanks for calling the show.
Okay.
You have to make your call quick.
Okay. I just want to say that I saw Unplanned, and I met a lady at the theater, and she was telling me, I've not researched it, but she said when Planned Parenthood goes into the schools and pass out birth control, that they know that those pills are not going to work. It's like they're sugar pills or something, and that the girls, they'll be taking them, and they know they'll be seeing them in a few weeks.
I don't know if that's true.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, I have no research on that. I have no idea if that's true. Now, we don't have to think about stories like that. What we know about Planned Parenthood is that they have a quota. Every woman of childbearing age, they want to have had 3 abortions in their lifetime. That's their kind of quota for American women of childbearing age. So if you know that, then you know that they're working in public schools to be that resource for these kids. And what I've seen in public schools, what they do is they're in the nurse's office. They're the person that the kids go to when they're scared to go talk to their parents. And once they've plugged into you, they're your healthcare provider for your sexual reproductive needs for the rest of your life, or until you come to your senses. And that's why they shouldn't be in K through 12 public schools, because they provide abortions. They don't counsel women on how to become moms. They only counsel them on how not to be moms. You can hold on until after the break and we'll take your call. Right now, if you're leaving us, God bless you from the heartland. We love having you make your home here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. If you're sticking around, it's One News Now, news and information up next for you. Keep it here.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
It was a time when men rebuilt the ruin. With one hand they laid bricks, with the other they held a weapon. Nehemiah said, "Let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach." Our nation, after many years of decline, is in a state of moral destruction. The cry is going out.
Do you see the distress we're in?
Join us in the battle. To learn more about our mission, visit urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. The House Judiciary Committee is getting ready to send subpoenas to see Special Counsel Robert Mueller's unredacted report. John Decker has more from the White House.
The House Judiciary Committee voted along party lines to authorize a subpoena for an unredacted copy of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia report, along with all of the evidence from Mueller's nearly 2-year investigation. Georgia Congressman Michael Collins is the top Republican on the House Judiciary Committee.
In the face of laws and rules he finds inconvenient, the chairman demands our nation's top law enforcement officer to break the rules and the regulations and the law. This is reckless, it's irresponsible, and it's disingenuous.
The vote sets up a fight between congressional Democrats and President Trump, whose Attorney General, Bill Barr, has committed to redacting some parts of the nearly 400-page report. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
Senator Tom Cotton is asking the IRS to investigate the Southern Poverty Law Center. Senator Cotton specifically wants to know whether the SPLC should retain its classification as a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. And he said as much Tuesday on Tucker Carlson Tonight.
The Southern Poverty Law Center has over $500 million. About a quarter of that, Tucker, is parked in overseas accounts, as best we can tell. I don't know many charitable advisors say it's best practice to send your endowment to overseas accounts in the Caribbean.
That, said Cotton, is one reason why Charity Watch gives the SPLC an F rating, something Cotton said is well-deserved.
They've really become kind of a hate group themselves. They have this so-called hate map, and they use it to stigmatize their political opponents. You know, respectable center-right organizations like the Family Research Council, their Alliance Defending Freedom. It's fine if you don't agree with those organizations. There are plenty of groups on the left I don't agree with, but I don't try to stigmatize them as a hate group and then go peddle that to CNN, the New York Times, try to attack their donors.
SPLC has also labeled the American Family Association a hate group, something the Tupelo, Mississippi-based ministry has challenged. The Food and Drug Administration is investigating a potentially serious side effect of using e-cigarettes. Here's Fox's Jim McKay.
The Food and Drug Administration is saying they are reviewing 35 reports of young people suffering seizures after using e-cigarettes. They're worried about the lack of labeling with nicotine, as some e-cigarettes may contain a potent amount, and extremely high levels of nicotine can have the effects of a poison, causing seizures, vomiting, and potential brain injury. They did also say they're not clear if it was the nicotine or the different chemicals in the vapor juice that caused the seizures. The major concern now across the country is young people using unregulated e-cigarettes. Jim McKay, Fox News.
Vice President Mike Pence is making a promise as he speaks at a conference marking the 70th anniversary of the founding of NATO.
Today, tomorrow, and every day, you can be confident. The United States of America is now and will always be Europe's greatest ally.
President Trump has at times been skeptical of the alliance, suggesting that it's obsolete and saying that European partners don't spend enough on defense. UK Prime Minister Theresa May met with opposition Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn today as part of an attempt to break the deadlock over Britain's plan to exit the European Union, or Brexit. The government's plan to leave the EU has been defeated 3 times in the House of Commons, and no alternative plan has won a majority vote in Parliament. The government's plan to leave the EU has been defeated 3 times in the House of Commons, and no alternative plan has won a majority vote in Parliament. Britain has until Friday, April 12th, to come up with a plan or risk the possibility of either crashing out of the EU with a no-deal hard Brexit or face a lengthy extension of a deadline. It has been nearly 3 years since the referendum was held in which the British people voted in favor of Brexit. In final news this hour, twin brothers in Brazil are being forced to each pay child support after a paternity test was unable to confirm who the father of a newborn baby is. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
The Christian life is a battle. A wise soldier puts on the whole armor of God so that he is able to stand against the wicked schemes of the devil.
We can have victory over the enemy when we go into the battle, not dependent on our strength, but dependent on the strength of Almighty God.
The Hour of Intercession with Joseph Parker, weekday afternoons at 1 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible,
America was founded on liberty and independence and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
What magic wand do you have?
A really strong job report to start the year, finishing really after a very strong year last year, 2.6 million jobs created last year, and here, the first month of this year, 304,000 net new jobs. That's more than economists had expected.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome back to the show. Hour 2 of Stacy on the Right, and we're super excited to get to talk to you today. We have a ton more content. We're going to chat with Erielle Davidson. She's going to be with us in the next segment. And we're going to talk about mortgage refinance applications actually soaring to the most in 4 years. Rates are plummeting. So, there's a lead on that where when the rates plummet, obviously it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get through a refinance process. So that means, the rates are going to hold for a little bit. And so everyone's like, just please don't stop the music. They're just enjoying themselves. Everybody's super at that opportunity. So you guys remember, and one of the things I think we got to highlight it right here on the show. Let's start it right now. Do you remember the Virginia lieutenant governor and how he was accused of rape? You heard anything about that recently? Or we're letting that go, huh? What about their governor? He was in a picture in blackface with somebody wearing a KKK outfit. He's also back in the legislature just doing whatever he's going to do. I mean, a total pass. Now, why is this important? Because I don't live in Virginia. I mean, I have family who does, but I don't live there. It's not super important to me whether or not he wore the blackface 17 years ago, what have you. The other guy, the lieutenant governor, he's been accused, but he has not been convicted of rape. So he's innocent until proven guilty. But do you see the double standard here? How there's nothing happening to them, but we had Kavanaugh almost lost everything over accusations that were clearly made up. Others have lost committee appointments. Steve King lost his, he's stripped of all committees because of a unacceptable turn of phrase. Because I really don't believe he was equating white supremacy with Western civilization. So, when do we see the Democrats walk the same line they've put down for all the rest of us? I guess we won't. So here we are with, you remember their old governor, Governor Northam is their new guy. Their old guy was Governor Terry McAuliffe, and he had a lot of scandals. Like, he had issues for days. And he still commentates politically. He still gets called into radio shows and stuff like that. So we've got this audio of him, and he sounds like he's not in support of the late-term abortion bill. But then, he's still in support of it. So here we go again. Let's listen to number 2.
I believe it was, Virginia law currently requires, that before a woman can end a third trimester pregnancy, she must get 3 separate doctors to evaluate the pregnancy and really certify that it's necessary. The bill would have changed the number from 3 doctors to 1. The goal of the bill, like many other states have done this, John, if you're in Patrick County or Lee County, or, if you're in a rural county and the mother's life is in danger, it is very hard to get 3 doctors. So the whole purpose of the bill was to, in my mind, what I'd heard, is to change it from 3 to 1. And I understand that's important for women who have a health emergency, and you may not be able to get 3 doctors. If you've got 1 qualified, certified doctor saying, yes, the mother's life is in danger. And I remind you, John, this is very important, because this is when stuff gets caught up in the political grinder, that there have only been 2 third trimester abortions in Virginia in the last 19 years. 2. So, unfortunately, and going to your earlier premise, you're right, any discussion like this is bad for Virginia. But it got turned into a political theater, and Republicans used it to their advantage. And I think Kathy Tran, when she was asked the question about the woman dilation, the answer is no. It's not yes. It's no.
So then at the end of the interview, he says, "You've not answered my question." The radio host there, he says, "You know, Mr. McAuliffe, you haven't answered my question. I asked you if you would have vetoed that bill." And he said no. So after all of that word salad, dancing around the issue, tap dancing, you know, doing a jig, cutting a rug, whatever you want to call that ridiculous, you know, meandering answer he just gave. And he is telling the truth. The previous law said you had to have 3 doctors before you could have a late-term abortion. 3 doctors who would certify that your life was in danger and the baby couldn't be saved, which basically was a safeguard against having one doctor who's really an abortionist saying, yes, your life's in danger, when in reality, there are very, like, there's just a minuscule number of cases in which a woman's life is in danger where the baby cannot be delivered by C-section or naturally. So the baby at that point, like they've saved babies who are 20 weeks. They put them in the NICU and they have to stay in the hospital for a few months, but they survive. They operate on babies in utero. So a baby that's wanted, the medical technology is so advanced, there's a great chance that your baby will survive and thrive, grow. They might spend time in the NICU. In fact, I saw a story here in St. Louis, this adorable little boy. He's a twin, and they were born prematurely. The twin brother has already been at home for 3 years. But this baby, the baby who was sick, the other twin, he was in the hospital, and he's basically been there for 3 years. They couldn't get him out of there until just last week. And he went home. And so he went home for the first time and joined his brother there. If they could save that premature baby and keep him in the hospital for 3 years, then, you know, what is Governor Northam, what is Terry McAuliffe, former governor of Virginia, what are they talking about? So it's really, I just don't want to have that baby. And I don't want it alive as a reminder of what I did or who I was with or whatever. And that's the story. That's really what's going on there. So it's wrong, and we have to stand up against it. But we also have to know that liberals are never going to be really totally honest about what's going on. But like, he didn't want to be on the record as saying he was fine with it. But then at the end, he relented and said, well, I wouldn't have, because he's still got political aspirations. He's not the governor anymore, but he still has to go to the cocktail parties, and he still wants to be a part of the fundraising apparatus. And, you know, he's got a life that he's going to lead after being the governor, and he can't betray the Democrats on their core issue, which is abortion. And for people who say it's not, you may argue with me. You may say their core issue is illegal immigration. And I'm not willing to argue with you about that. I think we could argue about more important things than whether or not their core issue is abortion or illegal immigration. We could just split the difference and say their 2 primary issues are illegal immigration and abortion. Now, if you're listening to the show and you're a Democrat, and what I said, you feel heat running up your arms, you know, up the back of your neck into your hairline, your face is getting hot, or you just feel a blinding rage, you know, you're going to do whatever you're going to do. But what I just said is just look at the reporting. What I'm talking about here when I say the 2 primary issues that Democrats care about are illegal immigration and abortion, look at how much time they spend talking about it. Look how rapidly they fight when those 2 issues come up. Look at the lengths they're willing to go to make sure that abortions are still available to people even after a baby has been born, which, by the way, that's not an abortion, that's infanticide. And the reason I say, you know, Democrats who are listening to this, because they're the ones who email me and say, I'm a Democrat and I don't agree with anything that you just said. Well, that's why you're a Democrat, because you don't agree with what I'm saying, because this is called the Stacy on the Right show, because I'm on the right side politically. But you're also disagreeing, and you're really upset and hot and angry about what I'm saying because you don't want to face facts about the people you're still giving your vote to. And because you worship skin, melanin content, permanent tan status, victimhood, demographic boxes, call it what you want. You worship that before you bend a knee to our God and Father in heaven. You put that first. If you didn't, then you'd be willing to vote for any person who would stand up for life, from natural conception, from conception to natural death. But because you have to worship your skin first, you have to bow down to your skin first, then, of course, you're like, well, I can't. The Republicans are all racist. All of the Republicans are racist? And also, please point to me in the Bible where it says race is more important than whether or not you're going to touch my anointed. Now, you're going to discount it. You're going to, you're inside of your own victim box, and you're taping it shut from the inside, trapping yourself in an ideological box that won't permit you to admit that the Democrats are going against what the Bible says people should and should not do. And that's fine, because sound can still penetrate your neatly taped up demographic box. And that's how you can still hear me. And I know you can hear me because you're emailing me. I'm undeterred, by the way. And I think your misspelled emails are funny. In fact, I go through and I correct the spellings, and then I really have a good laugh. But beyond that, it's an eternal issue. And you can't get away from it. You can't say, because so-and-so's a racist, or because so-and-so said this about immigrants, or because so-and-so wants to lower taxes for big businesses, then it doesn't matter if he's pro-life. What matters is he's done all those things, and Democrats would never do those things. You're wrong. You are wrong. And the proof that's in the pudding is, so let's just say all of the illegal aliens were to suddenly start voting like Cubans. You know, Cubans, when they get here, they turn into good, solid Republicans. They open up businesses, and they start outperforming all the other demographic groups in wealth attainment, education, and, home ownership. And so Cubans usually vote with the Republicans, the bulk of them. And so because of that, Democratic presidents like Clinton and Obama, they have worked really hard to make sure that as few Cubans get here as possible. Now, if people from South America, Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, if those people got here and suddenly started voting for the Republicans, the Democrats would go down there, and Nancy Pelosi would take off her heels and her dress, and she'd put on a little work outfit, and she'd start putting the wall together cinder block by cinder block with rebar and a concrete footing that was about 20 feet deep. Bank on it. So this isn't an issue of them caring about illegals. It's the votes. It's power. It's power seeking. It's the same thing with educational choice. If the schools that were opening up, the charter schools, KIPP schools, all these different schools that are opening up to try to serve kids who are not being served by public schools, we're teaching homosexual sex tactics, and that America is the worst place on the planet. Basically the same garbage kind of content that's going on in public school, then they wouldn't care about school choice. They'd be for it. Democrats would be for it. The same way they're absolutely against unwanted touching, kissing, violation of personal spaces, unless the person doing it is a Democrat. I've named off a few. They're making excuses for Joe Biden as well. They're going to kneecap him still, but a lot of Democrats are making excuses for him. So it's not about anything they believe. It's about raw power seeking, a hunger and thirst to control other people. How can you vote for that? All right, when we get back, we're going to have Erielle Davidson. Keep it here.
On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, we took the spices that we'd prepared and we went into the tomb. We found the stone rolled away from the tomb. When we went in, we didn't find the body of our Lord Jesus.
Who took him? Where is he? Who took him?
Why do you look for the living among the dead?
Where's Jesus?
He's not here. He has risen.
Jesus was alive. He's alive.
Jesus was betrayed, abandoned, mocked, beaten, and then crucified on a cross for sinners like you and me. The Son of God was buried, and after 3 days, he rose from that grave. American Family Radio encourages you to rejoice in the glorious reality that our God is a living God.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Heartbeat bills have been introduced in numerous state legislatures. Some have held up in committee, but others make it to a floor vote. Some even pass the legislature and may even be signed by the governor. In previous years, even those that survive are certain to be struck down by federal judges. But the political and judicial landscape may be changing. That is why David French argues that it is time for Republican legislatures to throw down the gauntlet and start passing heartbeat bills that would directly challenge Roe v. Wade. He argues that the time for incrementalism is over. Most bills passed by state legislatures have focused on the margin, banning third trimester abortions, establishing a waiting period, and mandating parental consent. He believes that incrementalism had its day, but now argues that it is time for bold action. He rightly fears that incrementalism now will merely encourage judicial caution. If your goal is to have the Supreme Court overrule Roe v. Wade, why do that if most of the bills merely nibble at the margins? You don't need to overrule this Supreme Court precedent when the latest state legislative bill on abortion merely requires an abortion doctor have admitting privileges at a local hospital. That brings us back to his broader point. He says there's a change in the cultural winds. We're on the cusp of a cultural moment. Passing bills that directly challenge the 1973 Supreme Court decision represent a statement of moral intent. The focus should no longer be on what he calls the less death approach of incrementalism, but should be replaced by bills that protect the unborn. The High Court will be forced to take note because we have some states, like New York, passing legislation expanding the right to late-term abortions, while other states pass legislation protecting the unborn. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. You can find out more at stacyontheright.com. You can find that fantastic list that I compiled of President Trump's accomplishments. That's over there, too. We'll share that. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. Frequent guest on the program. We have a fantastic time talking. Erielle Davidson is a contributor to The Federalist and to townhall.com. Erielle, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Stacy. It's always a pleasure coming on your show.
Okay, so I thank you for coming on. It's we have so much to discuss. I wanted to start off because you work for one of the organizations. You guys were recently in kind of like Twitter news. I saw it on Twitter. One of your writers was recently let go for kind of having a real meltdown online. DC McAllister, she used to write for The Federalist and also for The Daily Wire, and both organizations released her after she got into a dust-up with Yashar Ali, who I actually didn't know anything more than him being a reporter he seems to be kind of hugely popular with people on the left and the right for his comments. How are things going since then?
Things are fine. You know, the reality is that DC McAllister's comments were grotesque, they were wrong, they were crude. And you know, here's the thing. There's ways to be civil on Twitter and disagree with people, and then there's ways to just be a huge jerk. And I think that she definitely was in the latter category. Yashar is one of my friends. I would say that he's a phenomenally talented journalist, and one of the things that makes him sort of unique, and you kind of hit the nail on the head with this one, is that he really is beloved by both the right and the left because he's one of the few journalists out there who's maintained his composure and hasn't really gone on the train as being a biased activist. And so that's such a rare breed in terms of the journalist world right now. And so I think Yashar was just someone that you could see both on the right and the left that people were outraged by Denise's comments. And I myself was one of those people. I said, you know, it was completely inappropriate and outside the bounds of professionalism, outside the realm of just even being a decent person. And you know, I won't even repeat the comments that were made because they're actually not even safe for radio. But I will just say that, you know, I was one of those people that just felt it was just rude. Beyond that.
Yeah. So I guess the thing that I'm wondering about is because he kind of picked the fight, and I don't agree with what she said. I don't agree with having those kinds of comments going back and forth on social media, it defeats the purpose. It makes us unable to disagree with each other when we kind of lob into the personal attacks. But that being said, Yashar kind of, he poked her first pretty hard before the whole thing started. And I've seen a lot of people commenting saying, the response to trolls should be, silence, don't respond. Has he said anything about kind of his part in this whole thing?
Yeah, so her initial tweet was about something in relationship to her husband, and she did have a weird phrase in there where she said, "I slipped," and it was suggested that she had messed up. And that kind of language is actually is sort of odd in discussion of your relationship. Now, that being aside, I probably wouldn't have said anything. But I do think that when you make the cognizant choice to advertise a vignette of your relationship on social media, you should be prepared for someone to make some kind of feedback. And Ali's comment, in response to her tweet was really along the lines of, this isn't right or this doesn't seem normal. And he wasn't really, there are a lot of people that say he wasn't wrong in that comment and saying, that's kind of strange phrasing. Someone even said it was sort of reminiscent of something abusive. I slipped, I messed up. And what she did was, nothing of the sort. She didn't really do anything in terms of being incorrect in her relationship with her husband, according to her story. So, I will say that he didn't really, I would argue, from my perspective at least, as a third party, and obviously, subjective, I wouldn't really say he went after her, but her response is, again, beyond the pale. And so when I think about, how people react to comments that are made on their tweets, you've put that tweet up there, be prepared for some kind of commentary. And that's why I'm sort of a firm believer in keeping, my personal issues off of my Twitter. It's just because you don't want to invite that kind of criticism. You don't want to invite, because then it feels very personal. And so I think you are right in the sense that it feels personal. When someone comments on your relationship or the dynamics of your relationship, it feels incredibly personal. And so I think the way you avoid that is just by not really posting, incredibly personal things on Twitter to begin with. I think that's a mistake that not Denise doesn't just make that mistake. I think a lot of people on Twitter who use Twitter for professional purposes make that mistake frequently. And I think it's a very hard fine line to toe because we want to show, we want to have a personality. We want to show people that we're not just journalists, we're not just reporters, we're not just pundits, we have lives. But you have to be very careful when you do that.
So I agree with you. I think it's a great lesson for us all. I can't imagine a situation
Sorry
in which you would.
Sorry about the ambulance in the background.
Oh no, live radio. I'm fine with that stuff.
Okay.
I can't imagine a situation in which you, Erielle Davidson, would react like that. Or myself. I mean, we're all human. Any person can make, a huge blunder. But I also think the point that you make about us kind of deciding what we're going to put out there is important. And I have shared things about my family before on there, and I've also been attacked, when I'm not sharing things about my family. And I do less of that now just because of the way people respond sometimes. It's like a lot of mentally ill people trapped in a room on Twitter, and as soon as you say anything, they come over and they just start attacking you. And so I've stopped sharing some things because of that, because the mentally ill people seem to be on Twitter no matter what time of day you're on and no matter what you post, so you might as well not post things that are personal. But it was just a really interesting story, and that it was the smackdown was delivered almost immediately by both of the heads of the organizations that she was working for. And so I think it's unfortunate because we need all of these different voices out there writing and sharing content, and it's going to be, obviously she just won't be there. She'll probably find herself somewhere else, but she won't be in those two locations. So I wanted to pivot over to avocados, Erielle. I don't know if you're an avocado eater. Are you? Do you eat them? I do.
Oh, I feel like they're so overrated.
Yeah, they are. I eat them, but
I feel like they're incredibly overrated.
Yeah. So
I like guacamole with chips and a margarita, but it's really an addendum to the margarita, right? So,
right.
I'm not that crazy about avocados. Take them or leave them.
So you and I are in the same boat where I eat them. Like if it's in a salad, I won't say don't put that in. If there's guacamole around, I'm going to have some. I actually I don't like avocado toast, and mainly because I just haven't had any, because I'm not interested in having toast that's slathered with avocados. but I will, buy some occasionally and put them into salad. Basically, it's just salad. So I am not willing to make my eating of avocados superlative to securing the border, which a lot of people seem like they're like, what? We might not get avocados. We can't shut the border down. What do you make of that?
Well, isn't that a great metaphor for kind of how millennials prioritize things, Stacy? The fact that, no, seriously, the fact that avocados are more of a concern than national security. That's remarkable. And sadly, it's not at all surprising. I think that it's very emblematic of how millennials are able to prioritize things. And in terms of their political acumen, it's just really not there. I mean, if you look at the voters under 35 who support socialism, that's another you would think would be a no-brainer. I mean, socialism has accounted for millions of deaths in the world, and yet you still have an increasing number of people under 35 saying that they prefer socialism over capitalism. So again, I just think it's a lack of, logic. I think it's a lack of being able to prioritize things. I also think it's representative of, as well, of sort of the instant gratification culture that we've come to live in, especially my generation. We've grown up. We're the most privileged generation of any generation to live in the United States, and so we've become accustomed to certain comforts, and I think we take those comforts for granted, and I even think we're willing to elevate them over larger issues because we are so privileged and because we sort of lack an understanding of what it's like to go without something. And I think that that's sort of captured in the comparison that you gave me.
So thank you, because I was wondering if I was just the only one who was shocked that this had become an issue. The president said he might shut the border, and Mitch McConnell threw him under the bus, which I've been waiting, because Mitch McConnell was so good on the Merrick Garland thing, and he was awesome during the Kavanaugh thing. And I thought, he's going to let me down. He's not going to let me stay up here supporting him. He's not going to let me keep doing this. He's going to disappoint me. And here he is. Instead of him saying, this is the Democrats' fault. If the president has to shut the border, it's because of the intransigence of the Democrats. He says, oh, we can't do it because it would be devastating to economic, stability and yada, yada, yada. Really? The majority of what we're doing with Mexico benefits them. We support their GDP. They do not support ours. We do get products from them, but it's not things we can't get from anywhere else. So why would Mitch McConnell, why would he play this role unless he really is a part of the swamp like everybody says?
Well, I think that there's, so what I will say is that there isn't a lot of willingness in the establishment GOP to make sort of surface level economic concessions that might bring about long-term economic gains. So in the short term, things like tariffs, in the short term, things like shutting down the border could be economically harmful. Tariffs for sure, but I can't really comment much on the border. But I will say in the short term, I do think we're going to take an economic hit regardless. But the issue is that when you play politics, sometimes you do have to take those economic hits to see sort of the long-term gains or the long-term response that you're looking for. And that's just something that, the GOP establishment has always struggled with. They've always struggled with any sort of interference in free markets. And I sympathize. I myself is someone that is, hugely into free markets, and I love trade. But I do think that when it comes to playing politics, you do sometimes have to play these games. You do have to take these economic hits in the short term to see the long-term policy goals that you want. And, it's not like when you slap on tariffs, they stay there indefinitely. They don't. And that goes the same thing for the border. When you shut down the border, you're not shutting it down forever. You're not even shutting it down for probably more than a couple of weeks. But you're doing it because you're hoping to see a political response, and you have to leverage whatever economic tools you have. And I think, the GOP establishment has just always been incredibly wary of doing that. And that's what we're seeing now is we're seeing that wrestling between, what the traditional GOP would have done in 2004 and what Trump's GOP wants to do. And we're continuing to see those battles on all fronts, not just economic, but national security and the like.
Okay, so first off, Erielle, I accept your analysis. I wish, what I wish? I wish that President Trump would get this clip and hear what you just said so that he could understand that really it's totally up to him. And regardless of what Mitch McConnell says, his threat to shut down the border, he threatened it last year and now he's threatened it again, that he should do it because it is, as he did with the tariffs are working. They have hurt certain sectors of the economy in the United States. They've felt the brunt of it. But on the whole, they have moved China closer to where we want them to be on some of the economic issues that the president was railing about during the campaign. So the tariffs on the short term have worked. And he never said he was going to put permanent tariffs on. He just said, we'll just do the same thing to them that they're doing to us, and somebody's going to yell uncle. And it's working. So the shutting down of the border would not only prove to Americans that he's serious about this, it would prove to Mexico that he's serious, but it would be the perfect part two to what he already did, which was defunding our aid to, which countries did he defund? Not Mexico. It was El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, I think.
Guatemala, yes.
Yeah, so he should defund Mexico. If he did that and then shut the border, they would have to stop escorting these caravans of buses of people up to our southern border and dumping them off.
Oh, no, the imagery is obscene. The fact that we have people coming to the border in busloads expecting asylum, I think that shows that we have a deeply, deeply broken system. And he's not wrong when he says it's a crisis. It's absolutely a crisis. And any journalist or pundit from the enclaves of their, D.C. area or New York telling you it's not a crisis, it's absolutely a crisis. So I think he has hit the nail on the head with that. And I'm disappointed to see sort of the lame duck response of the GOP establishment in Congress, because I do think that this is, again, Stacy, you and I have talked about this in the past. I think Trump's instincts are incredibly good. I don't think he's as politically savvy as we would like, but that's only because he's not conditioned by politics. He's an outsider. And so it's a learning curve. But, you've said this in the past, and I agree with you. His political instincts are incredibly strong. And I think he's caught on to what's going on in the southern border, realizes the system is incredibly broken, and would like to do something about it. But there's this sort of inertia in Congress on both the right and the left about getting anything done. I mean, the inaction is sort of the status quo.
It is, and it's depressing, because when I hear Jay Johnson, who is hardly a moderate, like dude is over there on the left with Obama, they probably dance a jig over their leftist policies before they, bow down and worship the little leftist idols and, sacrifice something to them. That dude is a leftist, but he has been on television recently saying when it was 1,000 people a day, it was a crisis. Now it's 4,000 people a day. He doesn't understand how they're functioning. He says it is a legitimate crisis. Even Chris Cuomo, who wouldn't know the truth if it hit him and beat him into submission and then revived him and beat him again, he says it's a crisis. I mean, we've got images. I'm over on CRTV or conservativereview.com, and they have an article up here about another radio host who says it's impossible to have a civil society with this kind of invasion. The picture is of the southern border. It's a Getty Images, so this is like not a pic by some, activist. This is a real photographer took this picture. And the border wall stops, and then there's just a truck there, a little lonely Border Patrol truck there, and that's the only thing standing between migrants and the United States. Literally, like nothing, just wall and then nothing, and you can just walk right over.
Not comforting,
no,
Stacey. That's not comforting.
It's upsetting. All right, Erielle Davidson. You're always fantastic when you come on. Thank you for joining us today and for your awesome work over at townhall.com and The Federalist. Talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me, Stacey. Have a good one.
All right, you too. We'll be back with more. We'll be talking about the one-sided presentation against Trump, and we'll get to these other stories as well. We'll wrap everything up. Keep it here. This is Just a Minute with Stacy Washington. Illegal aliens cost the United States taxpayers an estimated $135 billion a year. Those same illegal aliens have sent an amount almost equal to that to 3 Central American nations since 2009. Annual remittances from illegal aliens living and working in the United States represent 20% of the economy in Honduras and El Salvador. Congress has made attempts to pass legislation taxing remittances at 7%. In 2016, immigrants in the United States sent home at least $138 billion. 7% of that would be nearly $10 billion. an amount that represents a sizable chunk of the money requested by President Trump to finish the border wall. Leadership in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras understand that America's elected officials lack the will to tax remittances or stop their citizens from coming into the country illegally. Why improve their countries when they can send their citizens here and reap the windfall? I'm Stacy Washington. Find out more at stacyontheright.com.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
The church has to take the lead in ensuring that men are properly trained for fatherhood. We have an epidemic in which boys are not growing up with their fathers. So as Christian men, we have to stand in the gap and make up the hedge so that our communities are not destroyed. When we see fatherhood as a blessing and not an inconvenience, we will see children as spiritual weapons in our arsenal. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
It's Fox Wheels.
If you're feeling overwhelmed because of clutter and crud accumulation in your car, Cars.com's Jenny Newman says you're not alone.
We've all got trash floating around our car somewhere.
So where do we start? She says take a deep breath, hold your nose, and spring into action using sprays specifically designed for a car's interior, not just your typical glass cleaner. Oops.
And really get those cup holders cleaned out, too, because they can be receptacles of nastiness.
And use the two-bucket method when washing your car to avoid grit getting on your sponge. A Cars.com survey shows getting the winter mess out of our cars is the #1 thing on a respondent's to-do list.
There kind of was a lot of finger-pointing. So, our respondents, they blamed their kids.
But that it's really a family team effort in keeping the car clean. Of course, you could just always spring for an expensive detail at the local car wash and be done with it. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Look, I have been right from day one, and almost all the other pundits and professors have just been dead wrong. It's time for them to fess up. It's time for CNN to issue an apology. CNN banned me from their air because I was being too fair. I was trying to assess what the essential issue was, and I wasn't being partisan. They didn't want that. They didn't want that. Fox is prepared to present all sides of the issue. I'm a liberal Democrat who voted for Hillary Clinton, but you have me on the air. CNN wouldn't have me on the air because they only want a one-sided presentation. And everybody who watched CNN was shocked by the conclusions of the Attorney General. Nobody who watched me was shocked because I've been predicting this from day one.
Wow. So that was Alan Dershowitz, and he's just been, and admittedly, I don't agree with him politically on a lot of things, but on the issue of collusion and Trump and this coup, he's been so good. And I don't mean because I agree with him. I mean, I learned things from watching his TV hits and seeing his analysis of the issues. And so it's super important to have voices out there like that where I think he has a little more credibility with me when he says these things because I know he's not a conservative. He voted for Hillary Clinton. He doesn't have a dog in this fight. He's not for my side politically, which means when he says these things, I have to kind of say, wow, so he's giving analysis here. This is not his opinion. So there it is. Let's go to the phones. Andy in Georgia. Hey, thanks for calling the show today.
Hey, how you doing, Stacy?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Earlier, someone had called in talking about Planned Parenthood coming into the schools and giving fake birth control.
Yes.
I don't think it really matters to them if they taking birth control or getting or abortions because or unless maybe the devil put it in their mind, that thought in their mind just for them to make some money off of it. But because the main thing I know, the devil's goal, I feel like, is to destroy the family.
Yeah.
Because if we don't if we don't have the concept of a family or father or parent love to their children, how are we going to get the concept of the love of the Father God for us, that He allowed His Son to die for us? You know what I mean? So that's
exactly
where I believe that God's example come from. You know what I mean?
You're right. You are absolutely right. I would just piggyback on that and say the reason they're able to get that foothold is because fathers who are in the home and they're active in their kids' lives, they're talking to their kids about sex and about the sanctity of marriage and about the mistakes that people can make when they decide they're going to just satisfy their physical urges. Dads that are engaged on that issue, talking to their kids about it and sending them to summer camps where they can learn about it. And I know that sounds weird because I'm always saying I don't want other people teaching my kids about reproduction and all of that. But I've talked to you about Faith Ascent Base Camp before. And they're not there talking to the kids about sex. They're talking about things that are being discussed in the culture, and the lectures that they have equip them with a biblical worldview. So when they're in school and the Planned Parenthood representatives come around, kids can say, you know what? No, thank you. I'm not interested in that. I don't need that. Thanks. I'm not an animal. I'm not automatically going to have sex just because I'm a certain age, but thank you so much for stopping by. That's how you can empower your kids to be able to talk about these issues. Tony in Florida, thank you so much for calling the show today. Hey, Tony. Welcome to the show. I think we may have lost him. So if you want to call in and join the program, we still have the rest of this segment left. It's 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. So we heard Dershowitz talking about CNN only wanting a one-sided presentation. And if you notice, all of their commentators, even if they say underneath on the chyron, it'll say Republican or Republican strategist or something like that, they're all Trump haters. So they might come on and they might argue a little bit about policy or something, but mainly they're there to say bad things about Donald Trump as Republicans. That's the kind of commentators that CNN is hiring right now. They hire anybody who is pro-Trump. That person has an expiration date of like 90 days before someone says something or is offended by them or can't be in the room with them, and then they have to be let go. So let's get to these news stories. And this is the makeover that I mentioned in the first hour of the Supreme Court, or Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's not the Supreme Court. It's the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the loony ninth. He's dealt a setback to progressive legal advocates. And, because they like to go to the ninth. They'll say, we have standing in this area because, this person is related to someone who lives in Oregon. And then they'll say, so we want this case heard in the Ninth Circuit. What they really mean is we want it heard by liberals. Now, there's been a lot of whining from Kamala Harris and Dianne Feinstein because the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, in order to put somebody on there, when you nominate them, you're supposed to ask the two senators from the Judiciary Committee who represent one of those states, any one of the states in the Ninth Circuit, and you're supposed to give them an opportunity to weigh in on the nominee. And they can blue card that person. And the blue card basically means this person is so outside of the pale that we won't accept them being nominated to the court. We won't even allow them to have a hearing. Well, President Trump has completely skipped over that process, and with good reason, because if he had given into that process, he wouldn't get anybody affirmed to the court. Now remember, Ninth Circuit covers 9 Western states, including California, Hawaii, and Oregon. So leftist strongholds. His latest pick to the Ninth Circuit, including Ken Lee and Dan Collins, they're expected to be confirmed. And once they are, the remaining vacancies that are left to be filled will mean that 13 of the 29 seats are filled with judges picked by Republican presidents. Now, just a year ago, it was 16 judges who were appointed by Democrats. So then there were only 6 of them who were chosen by Republicans. So President Trump has gone from 6 to 13. That's great. He still has more work to do, because I would like to see the Ninth Circuit have 20 judges that were appointed by Republicans. I don't know how long it'll take him to get there, if he'll be able to do it, but hopefully he will. I love that he's been able to do this, because he said we should break the court up. Michelle Malkin wrote an amazing op-ed about breaking up the Ninth Circuit Court. I remember reading it and thinking, if only. Breaking it up into smaller chunks would create different additional circuit appellate courts, but it would also mean that people who are in that appellate court system would have less wait time. They have lengthy waits right now. Their wait times would be reduced greatly if there were more judges and more courts in order to hear those cases. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But right now he's, doing, I think it's a good job he's doing with that. Let's go to Cindy in Virginia. Cindy, thanks for calling the show today.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, hi, Stacy. I've been listening to you for a while, and I just wanted to, first of all, I used to not like Donald Trump. I'm Korean background, and I tell you, I think what he does, whether he's Christian or not, is so pro-Christian that I, really started to support him more and more. So, but thank you for educating you, and Hamilton Corner is who I listen to. And I tell you, I've been so well educated by what the facts that y'all, bring out there that are truth, not the fake media.
Thank
you. I
you.
just want to thank you for all the truth that y'all, make sure we understand. So I've been sharing that information with my non-Korean friends to make sure they know the truth too. So I've been sharing that too.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you're getting that out there. That's good to do. I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah, and my friends think I'm crazy, but I say, hey, listen, why would you just listen to one side when you listen to both sides and then decide what's truth?
Yes.
That's what I tell them. But I was calling about the Unplanned, the movie. My friends and I, my Mother's in Prayer friends and I, we watched it last Thursday night. And on Fridays, I am a volunteer mentor, client mentor at it's a pro-life pregnancy center. And, as I was watching an 8-week-old pregnant mother's ultrasound, and I've seen it many times before, Stacy, I don't know if you know, in the beginning of baby's growth, there's a thing called Cheerio ring on top of their head. The Cheerio ring is what feeds them nutrients before the umbilical cord kicks in.
Right.
And as after the movie, I'm watching this mother's ultrasound, and then suddenly it reminded me of an halo, like angel's halo.
Oh, right.
I never thought about it that way. I've been doing this for a little over a year now. And just after the movie, just watching it, suddenly, of course, we're always praying for our clients because a lot of them come in wanting to do an abortion, so they're getting a free ultrasound. And as I'm watching this, it just reminds me of, it's like they belong to God, like an angel's halo. And as soon as the human body and umbilical cord, human starts feeding, the body starts feeding the baby, that halo, that Cheerio ring disappears.
It's amazing. It's just amazing.
I know. And my friends, and Friday, after watching it, I was like, I thank God, because I really felt like this is something that never really connected. You just assume it's there. And after watching the movie, it really connected with me, and I was able to share that with my other friends to let them know this life, even from very beginning, God has them. They're God's angels.
That's right. It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Thank you for the work that you're doing at that pregnancy resource center, the ultrasounds and the prayer over those women. And I want to hold her up as an example. She's one of the people. There are millions of women and men like her who work at pregnancy resource centers. They work some of them are branded differently, but they all do the same work. And they are volunteers, and they spend their time there because they want to be a part of the solution. So, so if you're someone who you're praying, you're part of the solution. I don't mean to demean anyone's work where they're, if you're pro-life, but you don't have the time, you're working or what have you, and you can't do that. Don't take it the wrong way. I'm not saying that. But for people who take the time that she's taking and she's in there doing that, for her to make that connection, and then she's just shared it on air here with us, so we all get to experience that. it just gives me chills because I know that God is in the mix here. And God is never slow. He's never late. He's never, his will and his purposes will be achieved. His will be done. And if you doubt that, just look in the Bible at the way David would be sinning and still fulfilling prophecy. And I mean, so he probably thought, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm just doing this so I can stay alive. And in God's providence, he would still be fulfilling prophecy and doing what needed to be done. And so when we look around and we feel very discouraged, I know I do. I feel utterly discouraged by what's going on at the southern border. I mean, the tyranny that's on display right now is so magnificent and so well orchestrated and so brazen. It's hard to believe we're awake, right? This looks like what happens in a movie and then the good guys come in and they fix everything. Only we're awake and the good guys seem a little overpowered at this point. But I have to be reminded of what our good caller, who she just shared, she talked about how the baby, before the umbilical cord is formed, there's a little halo over its head. And that is just an indicator from God to us. He's always in control. And so he's in control whether our border is overflowing or whether it's completely sealed and utterly, just the closest to human perfection it can get. And I see God's hand in the way things are developing with this movie, Unplanned. The way they were able to pull it together, the obstacles that have gone up in front of them, and they still were able to do it. The production quality, to watch a movie like that that's made independently, to have that kind of an experience in a movie theater, that happens when God is in the mix. And so, people are talking about how they've gone to see the movie and they've been released from the bondage of their own abortion or their spouse's abortion. People are coming out changed. And that's what God is all about. Of course, God is holy, and he is a God of justice and order, and every evil deed will be punished. No one will escape judgment, but he is also merciful, and he loves us, and he wants to see us healed and made whole. And for every person who comes into that theater and leaves, maybe feeling convicted, but they know, okay, I can be forgiven. If Abby Johnson, who participated in, almost 30,000 abortions, can be forgiven, then I can be forgiven too. For every one of those people, there's a party going on in heaven, and all of us down here who feel discouraged about any situation, we have to stop where we are and say right then and there, praise God. Thank you for what you're doing through this movie, through these fallible human beings, through the mistakes that Abby Johnson made. Thank you for what you're doing. The healing is happening. Go see the movie, and Lord willing, I'll be back with you tomorrow with more Stacy on the Right. Have a great evening, and good evening from the Heartland.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Always stay up to